Hello everyone, this is a conversation style CR question. Let's get started with the question. I'll classify this one as a GMAT 600 to 650 level question, right? It's a conversation between two people, Linda and Fiona. Typically what I tend to do is in CR questions, I'll quickly glance through what the question stem is, what is this expected, right? What are we expected to finally come up with as an answer? Once we know that, as we are reading this argument, we necessarily will have to read the full argument before answering the question. We'll know what we are expected to do and therefore have a good sense of how to make sense of the argument itself. Quickly go to the next slide and see what the question is. Which of the following can be used by Fiona to further establish that Linda need not be correct in her reasoning? I'm not looking at the answer options at all right now. This tells me that Fiona and Linda are probably not agreeing on something, and which of the following could be a good answer option, is a better answer option to help Fiona counter Linda's argument. Let's get started. Any argument need not necessarily be a conversation style argument. The crux of any argument is the conclusion that the author is trying to drive at. In this case, essentially there are two authors because there are two people who are having a conversation. So Linda is probably wanting us to believe something, and Fiona, from the question stem we understand that, is trying to make us believe the opposite, probably, right? Let's check out what their conclusions are. So spotting the conclusion is the crux of any argument. Once we know that, in any argument, there are two things which are explicitly stated by the author. One, what the author is trying to convince us about, that's a conclusion. The second is the premises, which is the evidence that the author is providing for us to believe what the author wants us to believe in, right? Let's get started. So premises are ones which are explicitly stated once you have removed the conclusion from the argument. So I'm going to read what Linda's argument is. After having read that, let's just mark what her conclusion is. And then let's go through the argument for Fiona and do the same thing. In the 1800s, it was found that 1 in every 6 women who gave birth in hospitals died of a fever they had contracted after delivering the child, and that the mortality was not as high if they gave birth at home with the help of a midwife, right? So death after delivering a child was much higher when they delivered at the hospital than when they took the help of a midwife and delivered at home, right? This is a fact, this is information provided. It was found that the doctors had a poorer sense of hygiene and that their dirty hands and instruments were leading to pathogens entering a woman's bloodstream. So essentially, she is giving a cause-effect relationship. What basically led to this higher mortality rate? The higher mortality rate is the effect, and the cause for that effect is basically poorer hygiene, hand hygiene by the doctors, and the fact that their instruments that they used for delivering babies were not probably hygienic, were not sterilized, is what they were saying. That led to pathogens entering the women's bloodstream, leading to a higher mortality rate. And that did not happen is the unsaid part when it comes to when the delivery was done by a midwife at home, right? Good. Next, let's look at the last sentence. Thankfully, hygienic conditions today are much better and women are safer, right? This is the conclusion that Linda is drawing. She's saying, hey, things were bad in the 1800s. They are not so right now. Hygienic conditions are a lot better right now, and therefore women are safer, is what Linda's argument is. So identified her conclusion, these are the premises. She has essentially told us what happened in the 1800s, and she has also explicitly stated what led to that happening, right? In the hospitals, poorer hygiene of doctors is what led to it. The unsaid component of it is basically when midwife delivered babies at home, the hygienic conditions were superior and therefore pathogens did not enter the bloodstream. That's the unsaid component of it. Let's move on to what Fiona is saying. But doctors today are so overworked that a number of doctors, while aware of the need for better hygiene, it's not that they're not aware of it, barely find time to wash their hands. So she's saying that, hey, they know they have to wash their hands. Earlier doctors probably weren't aware, but these people are aware of it, but they're so overworked that they don't have time to wash their hands. The net result is the hygiene factor is still not great, is what she's driving at. Therefore, the likelihood of infections caused by doctors is probably not any better than what it was in the 1800s. So your conclusion that women are safer on account of that particular component is not necessarily true, is what Fiona is driving at, right? So they're having a contradicting argument. Linda is saying they are better because the hygienic conditions have improved, whereas Fiona is saying that doctors don't find to wash their hands despite knowing that they have to wash their hands, and therefore the conditions that women are facing today are not any better. Right? Let's look at, we have to support Fiona. She has to find something, some additional evidence to say that, hey, look at this, if this is information, if this is information which is made available to you, wouldn't you believe that doctors are not washing their hands? The hygiene conditions have not necessarily improved for women. That is the kind of answer is what we are looking at. Right. Let's look at the answer options. Look at the question stem once more and go to the answer options one at a time. Which of the following can be used by Fiona to further establish that Linda need not be correct in her reasoning? We'll have to look at the answer options. But before that, let me just walk you through both these arguments from a very CR structure point of view, right? Linda's argument had two basic structures to it. One, Linda had a cause-effect relationship. This is Linda's argument, right? It had a cause-effect relationship, which basically poorer hygiene of doctors is what is the reason that more women died. Poorer hygiene led to more deaths is what is the cause-effect relationship. The cause-effect relationship was explicitly stated, so that's no longer an assumption, right? The second component to her, which is a comparison part of it, which on the face of it, we can think of it as that she is comparing women's hygiene condition, the conditions that are made available to women when they deliver babies today versus what happened then. That's one thing. But the more important thing from a structure point of view, what is she saying? She is saying that hygienic conditions today are much better and women are safer. So, she is saying hygienic conditions have improved, right? Hygienic conditions overall have improved. But why did more women die earlier? The more women died earlier primarily because of poorer hygiene of doctors. Here, the comparison that Linda willy-nilly is making, or unsaid assumption that she is making, is a many to one comparison. Let me explain that. What she is essentially saying that if the overall hygiene conditions have improved, then necessarily the hygienic conditions with respect to how clean doctors' hands are would have also improved in the same ratio. Everything improved, therefore, one component of it, which is the hand hygiene of doctors, that has also gone up, is the assumption that she is making, which need not necessarily be true, is what Fiona is trying to break. She is saying, hey, overall hygienic conditions might have improved, but doctors don't find the time to clean their hands, and therefore, your many to one need not hold good. Generally, hygiene would have improved. You might have ultraviolet, infrared, whatever, some ways of cleaning things, and you might sterilize it, equipment might be better, instruments might be better, but doctors' hand hygiene still seems to be the same as it was in the 1800s for a different reason right now. Then they probably were not aware, now they don't find the time to do it, is what she's saying. So, this many to one is an unsaid assumption in Linda's argument. Fiona is trying to break that. We need to find an answer option which is going to give some more evidence for Fiona to say, hey, look at it, this is why I am saying they are not basically washing their hands, and therefore, doctors' hands are probably not as hygienic today or as unhygienic today as it was in the 1800s. Quickly look at it. A nationwide survey found that doctors, especially experienced ones, are more prone to the belief that they could not possibly be carrying pathogens, right? This is a nationwide survey, so that basically lends credibility to the finding. Let's find out whether this finding is helping Fiona or Linda. If doctors believe that they could not possibly be carrying pathogens, right, especially the experienced ones are believing that, if I believe I'm not carrying pathogens, I'm not going to take any extra effort to sterilize the equipment, to do things that are going to make me free of pathogens. I'm believing I don't have it, so I'm not going to be doing it. So, if this is what many doctors experienced one believe, then they are not likely to be washing their hands, and then it basically lends support to Fiona's argument that, hey, earlier I said they do not wash their hands because of paucity of time. This basically lends credibility that one more reason that they don't wash their hands is not because of paucity of time, is because they believe they don't carry pathogens. So, if they are not washing their hands, they are likely to be carrying pathogens, and that scenario of them not washing their hands and carrying pathogens today is the same as what it was in the 1800s. This seems to lend credibility to Fiona's argument and dent Linda's argument. So, possible answer. We have not seen the other ones. So, I'm going to put a question mark saying that this is definitely a good answer option as a correct answer option. Look at B, C, D, E, and if none of them is better than this, then let's come to this. Second one, it is reported that around 50,000 people die every year in our country from hospital acquired infections, right? Hospital acquired infections are basically infections that acquire when you are in a hospital, but is it because of doctors' poorer hygiene? We do not know. It could be on account of any number of things. So, this is generally stating hospital acquired infections. This is not lending credibility to either side. It's basically that's existing. We do not know whether Linda's argument that doctors have become more hygiene conscious, or Fiona's argument that doctors are not yet as hygiene conscious when it comes to hand hygiene as they were in the they're actually as bad as it was in the 1800s. It doesn't lend credibility to either side. It basically saying hospital acquired infection does not point it to doctors' hand hygiene. Therefore, B is not the answer. Want to see compulsory hand cleansing is strictly adhered to by all doctors and nurses before every major surgical procedure. Two things why C is not the answer. Let's take a look at it. Look at this. The first case, if they adhere to these, then obviously it means that their hand hygiene is better than what it was in the 1800s, which means it's actually lending credibility to Linda's argument. Therefore, this is not the answer. That itself is enough for us to say this is not the answer option. The second thing, I want us to make note of these things, because in some other question, these little scope shifts could make a big difference. When do they adhere to strict cleansing procedures? They adhere to strict cleansing procedure, not just doctors, even nurses is what it is saying. That happens before every major surgical procedure, right? We do not know whether the childbirth delivery process always is a surgical procedure, need not be, and whether that surgical procedure gets classified as a major surgical procedure. These are two things which are not said in the argument, and we can't make that assumption. So, it is talking about one scenario where it happens. We do not know whether that scenario is the same scenario which is causing, which will be the one that will be adhered to. Is childbirth delivery, right, that process, is it classified as a major surgical procedure, is not something that we are aware of from this argument. So, it could happen here, but it need not happen there. In that case, it basically need not hold good. But assuming, if you take for a moment that the childbirth is also a major surgical procedure, it's supporting Linda and not supporting Fiona. On account of that as well, we know that this is not the answer option. Move on to D. During a study, doctors handling newborn babies self-reported a hand cleansing rate of 90%. Again, two reasons. Look at it. If 90% of them have a self-reported hand cleansing, then it basically is supporting Linda, and therefore this is not the answer. And second thing, again, look at the scope shift. This is what you need to keep in mind. These are the people who are handling newborn babies, right? Handling newborn babies could be the job done by pediatrician, whereas delivering babies is done by a gynecologist / obstetrician. So, we are talking about two different things. The scope has shifted from how do they basically cleanse their hands during childbirth versus what they do when they are handling newborn babies. So, it's a slight scope shift. These two need not be one and the same that we are talking about. More importantly, it is supporting Linda and not supporting Fiona. Therefore, this is not the answer option. So, ruled out B, C, D on various reasons. Move on to the last one. Nurses are not any better than doctors in adhering to strict cleansing schedules, especially when busy, right? So, it basically is saying that when they're busy, nurses are also not doing it, or as much as doctors are not doing it. This basically assumes, it's like as if you've said something once and you repeat it a second time, it becomes true. This is not providing any additional evidence. She had already stated that doctors are busy and therefore they are not washing their hands. This is essentially restating that. So, no additional information has come from what we had. It just is pointing fingers at one more set of people, which is the nurses, and our argument is about what is happening on account of doctors not maintaining hand hygiene. This does not give any evidence to lend credibility to that claim made by Fiona. So, this is not supporting it, it just reiterating the same thing. Therefore, though it looks as though it might be the answer, it's not providing any additional information for us to believe Fiona more than what we did at the earlier instance. So, this is not the answer, it's not giving us any additional information. So, B, C, D, E ruled out. That leaves us with A as the answer as we initially thought. Quickly run through it. Nationwide survey, especially by experienced doctors, if they believe they are not carrying pathogens, then they are not likely to be maintaining hygiene as much as they are expected to do, because they don't believe they are carrying pathogens. They are not likely to be washing their hands, and this supports Fiona's argument, and it's not a one-off case, it's a nationwide argument. So, credibility to this claim is also that much better. A is the correct answer to this question.